everyone, grab your bubble teas, grab your teas or even your coffees, your lattes, espressos, whatever it is, and come join us here for today's Lockdown Tuesday. And today's title is, Who You Talking To? Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you are wondering about the title. Today we're going to go over an awesome story, one of my favorite stories in the Bible from John chapter 4. It is a story of the Samaritan woman by the well. So everyone get ready. We're going to start now. So, who knows the story of the Samaritan woman by the well? I'm going to tell you this very simply, very easily. You guys don't need to read it. You can read it a little bit later. So what happened is, Jesus is like sitting by the well. And then this woman comes along from Samaria. So she's a Samaritan woman comes along, and she puts her like bucket into the well. She takes it up. And all of a sudden, to her, Jesus is just a dude. So it's like, there's this dude there, and he's just sitting there, and he looks at her and says, "Can you get me a drink?" And she's like, "Wait a second. Don't you know that I'm a woman and I'm from Samaria?" And the thing you need to know is, back then at that time, women were not looked at very highly. And to the Jews in southern Judah, they didn't look at Samaritans that high either. So she was kind of shocked, like, "You are asking me for a drink?" So she's shocked. And then all of a sudden Jesus says, not dude, but he'd be like, "If you knew who I was, you'd ask me for a drink, because the drink I'd give you is living water." And then she's like, "What?" And he's like, "If you had the drink I give you, never go thirsty." So imagine someone said this to you, how skeptical would you be? But she's like, "Who is this guy?" And then Jesus says to her, "Hey, go get your husband." And she's like, "I don't have one." And he's like, "No, actually, you've had 5. And the man you're with right now isn't even your husband." Right? So now he shows he knows everything about her. So now she's even shocked. So she's like, "Okay, this guy must be someone big." So he's like, "Are you a prophet?" And he's like, "No, could be." And then she says, "Okay, I got a question for you then." You see, in the past, northern Israel and southern Judah were split up. Their country split in two, kind of like North Korea and South Korea. So she's like going, "Well, the temple's in the south, and we can't go there. So we all worship in the mountains, and then you guys say that we have to worship in the temple. So which one is it?" And Jesus answers it very profoundly, and he says, "It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's in the temple. Doesn't matter if it's in the mountain, but a time is coming right now where you worship God in spirit and truth." And this is where we're going to end the story here. So when you hear this story, kind of one of the things we're trying to do here on Lockdown Tuesdays is we listen to these Bible stories and we wonder to ourselves, how the heck is this relevant to my life right now during coronavirus, in this lockdown, when I'm home by myself all day? Like, does this really matter to me at all? And the answer is, I'm going to tell you this about the Bible. The Bible has been sold for 200 years. 200 years it's been selling. And they say that it's estimated anywhere from 3 to 5 billion copies of the Bible have been sold. The actual Bible itself has been around for 1,500 years. So the one thing I'm telling you right now is it doesn't last this long. Books don't last this long unless they're good. And the reason why it's good is not because there's a good read. It's because it's a book of wisdom. And it's teaching us how to live our lives properly. And this is why it kind of remains constantly for the last 2,000 years. So here it is. How can this story be relevant to now, right? How can it be relevant to now? So is it relevant or not? So what can we learn about ourselves through this story? So the first thing is this. Let's go back to the beginning of the story, right? And in the beginning of the story, what's going to happen is Jesus is sitting by the well. The woman comes over. She starts getting water. And the first thing that happens is she's shocked, right? She's shocked because this Jewish man is asking her for some water. So let's take a look at verse 9 right now. It says, "The Samaritan woman said to him, 'You're a Jew, and I'm a Samaritan, and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans.'" Now, remember, we've read the story once already. She's had 5 husbands, and the husband the guy she's with right now isn't even her husband. So what do you think she's thinking? She's like, "Ooh, why would a man want to talk to me? Maybe I'm pretty, right? Well, I wonder what it is." So she's kind of interested, like, "Hey, so you want a drink from me?" And you see that because of her life, she had 5 husbands searching for another one. She is searching for her happiness or her fulfillment in life through this type of relationship. She's constantly trying over and over and over again. Now, what does it mean, husbands? People, everyone, all of you over there, we're all searching for a husband. Now, we're not talking literal husband, but in this case, these are the things that we search for, we yearn for, we keep looking in life, whether it be money, cars, relationships, houses, families, whatever it is. We're all looking for that husband. And here's the thing that's really crazy, is that we are all going through the exact same cycle as her, right? Because what happens is, the crazy thing is this, it never works, right? She had the one husband, went to the second husband, third husband, fourth husband. She's had 5 already, which means this is even, this doesn't even happen right now with the Kardashians or with anything that happens here in this real world. People don't divorce 5 times. 5 times, and she's with the 6th man right now. And what happens with us too is there are certain things we look for in life, and we search, and we think that's the thing that's going to fulfill us, and that's the thing that's going to make us happy. We're searching like the Samaritan woman. And what happens is, the reason why we keep searching over the same thing over and over again is, this is the crazy part, because if you do the same action over and over again, you know what's going to happen? The exact same result. Isn't it true? You go to the next husband, the same result's going to happen. What does that mean? It means that she was searching for a husband, it didn't work out. But she couldn't get an answer. It's the same like us in life. Have you guys ever reached that moment in life? Like when you're really difficult in school, in your job, with your family, whatever it is, and you kind of sit there like, what's the point? Why am I doing this? And you start thinking about what is the purpose of life and why am I even living? And then do you get an answer? You don't. So what do you end up doing? You just kind of go back into the same cycle you were before. Why? Because you can't get an answer. And we kind of go through this over and over and over again. We search, but there's no answers. So we just keep searching every time for the exact same thing, and we always get the same result. So what happens next? Jesus gives her this interesting question. He says, hey, if you knew who I was, give you living water. And she's like, huh? And then verse 11. Verse 11 is interesting because what she say? She says, dude, you have nothing to draw with, and this well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Excuse me. So what is happening here? Life is very similar too, because when we're searching for something over and over again, we can't get an answer. We can only think one way. So this woman now, when Jesus speaks to her and says, I'm going to give you living water, she's like going, where's your bucket? Don't you got a bucket or something? And she's thinking a certain way, because that's the way that she's been thinking all her life. In the same way too, our automatic assumption when we live in life is like the Samaritan woman is you keep looking for physical things. But if I just get another car, if I just get a better job, if I just make a little bit more money, or if I just get a better man or a prettier wife, right? We always think these things and we're searching more. Maybe I got to change my major. Maybe I got to change my job. And we keep thinking these things and we think always in the same way, in this physical and materialistic way. But you have to understand is it's not true. How do I know it's not true that these physical things are not going to guarantee you it? Because let me tell you how easy it is to disprove that these materialistic physical things will get you what you want, that fulfilling and meaningful life. I'll prove it to you. You can get 2 of the exact same thing, and one you'll throw away, and one you'll keep and you'll cherish forever. And it could be the exact same thing. Why? Because it's not actually about that thing. Let me give you an example. Let's pretend it's a car, okay? Let's pretend it's a car. So you think to yourself, in your position right now, that if you get a car, it would be so valuable to you. And you know what? It's not going to be in all cases. Why? Because what if you already have a better car? Is that car meaningful anymore? No. What if you get the exact same car and you don't have a car? What happens? Then the car becomes very meaningful because you really need it. If that thing, that car, whatever it is guaranteed to fulfill and give you that happy life, then what would happen? Every time you'd get it, you'd just be happy. Every time. But you don't. And what's even more meaningful than this is, imagine someone gives you a pen, but you know what? this pen might be only worth like 5 ringgit or $5, whatever it is. But it really matters to you who gives it to you. And one will make you more happier than the other. What if some stranger off the street gives you this pen? What are you going to do? Oh, thanks. And you think it's really weird. But what if it's that guy that you have a crush on? What if it's that girl that you're so in love with, and she's like, hey, I got you this pen. How would you feel? Your heart would explode. Now, is it really the pen? And the answer is no. Because that same pen is given to you by a stranger, and you don't get that same feeling. The meaning, right? The thing that's more important is coming from something completely different, not the actual materialistic thing. And that's what we have to realize. Just because we're living in this physical world, what happens is we are controlled not by the outside things, but you have to realize that you're controlled more by the internal things. Think about it. It's always about how do you feel? What do you think? What's in your heart? What's in your mind? If you look at Matthew chapter 6, verse 21, it's essentially what it says is, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, right? What you really value in your heart, that's where you want to be. The heart matters more in this world. And that's why these physical things don't matter as much. If we move along the story, what happens is there's this big question. There's a big question. Jesus says, hey. You know what? If you drink this water I give you, never go thirsty again. And then she's like, this is what I need. I need this. I never want to drink again, please. Because you know what? Back then, to get water, you have to always go to the well. Every single day, every single time you need water, you're going to the well. You're going to the well. So he's like, what? And she's like, man, if I never go thirsty, I never have to come back to this well again. Never have to walk that far, put that bucket in, every single day coming 3-4 times a day. So what happens next? She's like, give it to me. And he's like, let me ask you a question first. And she's like, oh, okay. And then he begins to tell her what the real issue in life is. And he says, hey, go call your husband. Huh? Right? So if you look at verse 16, he says, go call your husband and come back. And she's like, I don't have one. And Jesus says, no, you've got 5 husbands in the past, and you're with the 6th right now. And by the way, I'm not going to be your 7th. Well, he didn't say that. I just added that in, right? So there's like, she's with the 6th guy in her life, which then is he's showing her what the real issue in her life is. She's like thinking, oh, I want this water that I'll never go thirst again. But he says, let me tell you what the real issue is. The real issue is not about this water here. The real issue you're dealing with, I want you to think about this really deeply, because everyone else here in this lockdown time, with this a lot of time on your own, we get to face ourselves and see what our real issues are. Are we really happy? Are we really fulfilled? Are we really living a meaningful life? Now that all the distractions are gone, you have to face yourself. And she looks at him and says, whoa, how'd you know? Just like a lot of people out there in the internet world are thinking the exact same thing is, man, this is exactly what I'm going through. Because you know what? Before this lockdown, most of you probably wouldn't be like logging on to this Facebook channel to listen to a Lockdown Tuesday about a Bible story, right? Most of you wouldn't do it. You just wouldn't. Why? Because we're living our lives. We're distracted. So many other things distract us from what the core issue in our life is. But when he points it out to her, she's like, that's it. That's it. And in the same way, with this book of wisdom we use right now, everyone is understanding that, this is speaking to me too. It's speaking to my heart. And the issue that I'm dealing with is actually not a physical issue. Then what kind of issue is it? As it continues on, Jesus asks a last question, right? And this last question is very interesting. It is, hey, we worship in the mountains and you worship in the temple, so where should we actually worship? And if you look at verse 24, verse 24 says this. It says, God is spirit and his worshipers must worship in spirit and truth. And the key point we're looking at here is spirit and truth, which means that the answer lies in, he's basically telling you straight up from the beginning, he's like, hey, look, I'm looking for something to make me happy. I'm looking for something to fulfill my life. And all these husbands I've had, nothing's worked. And then the next question is very interesting. She's like, where should we worship? And once again, our minds go back to the physical. And that's what happens to us. Even when someone gives you a message, you're like, that's it. It's something that's something more meaningful. But then what's the first thing your mind does to you? It says, but how am I going to live? But what about the money? But what about if I don't have a car? Oh, but what if I don't have a job? This is nothing about you can't have a job, you can't have a husband or a wife, you can't have any of those things. This is about what is the core issue that you're dealing with in your life right now. Already her mind reverts back to the physical. The materialistic is, where should I worship? And he says, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Why? Because the issue that we're dealing with is not something you go to. It is here already with you all the time. This is why if you're terribly sad or depressed, does it matter where you go, or are you depressed everywhere you go? You're actually depressed everywhere. It doesn't make a difference if you go to Disneyland, which is supposed to be the happiest place on earth, which is not. I went there 11 out of 14 days once when I was young. Terrible place. I threw up 3 times. But either way, it doesn't make a difference. Is it really the happiest place if your parents just divorced and you're sad? Doesn't make a difference. Is it really a happy place if your husband cheats on you or your wife cheats on you? Are you going to be happy anywhere you go? And the answer is no. What happens is you carry it around with you everywhere you go. That's why, haven't you guys ever seen, I remember back in the days of my high school, I'd have a friend of mine. And you know what that friend would do? That friend would be like, the funny thing with my friend is, he'd be so happy when he just got his girlfriend, and when they broke up, he's sad the whole time. We're like, come on, man, you're so cute. Like, and he's like crying all the time. Why? Didn't matter if we were playing basketball. Didn't matter if we're doing anything else, even going to a movie. It's because his heart was sad. He takes it everywhere he goes. And that's why the physical things don't matter as much. It's not about where. It's not about the physical materialistic things. The thing we're learning here is people have to start looking at the inside and stop searching for a husband. You got to search as the core issue is something that is here. You see, if happiness, that joy, that fulfillment, that meaning was something physical, then every time that someone gets a pretty girl walks by, you should feel fulfilled. Every time like a cute boy, or every time you get a new house or a car or a job, whatever it is, then you should be fulfilled. But the answer is no, it doesn't work that way. People still feel empty. We still do. And this is why when I'm slowly coming to my conclusion right now is this. We're in the middle of lockdown, and as I was speaking a little bit about this before, you're at home with too much time. It's too much. And one of the things is, because we have to stay at home, what's the one thing that doesn't happen to us is we don't get distracted. You can't get distracted for 12 hours. Your home's not big enough. You can't get distracted that long. You get bored of the games eventually. You get bored of sleeping eventually. You get bored of eating eventually. What happens is there's no distractions. You're going to look for things to do, but your house is very limited. You can't go outside. And you realize what? Life, you get to start to stare life right in the face right now during this lockdown time. You get to stare yourself right in the mirror. And what's going to happen is you face yourself every day and you begin to realize what you're really lacking, or you begin to realize what life you really had. And this is something that you really have to think about even more deeply. You have to start thinking about what is missing. Now is a time for a real search, I'm telling you, right? There's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to go. There's no more husbands to run to. It's just you. It's just you. What has to happen is not where you worship. It's not looking for a bucket to get this living water. What is it? It's spirit and truth. It's here on the inside. You need to know the truth, right? Because if you don't know the truth, it's like every problem. When you go to any, like Alcoholics Anonymous, drug addicts, you go to these drug facilities, what's the first thing they make you do? You have to know the truth is, I am addicted to alcohol. Like you have to admit it. You have to acknowledge it first before you can move forward. And in the same way, too, when you're looking at this story today, this is not a story about a Samaritan woman by the well. Remember, like the very first Lockdown Tuesday we did, this story is about you. It really is. You get to see yourself for real right now, and now you got to deal with him. We got another week here in Malaysia, but it's we're still gonna have social distancing. It's still not gonna be as easy. But you have to deal with it now, or else when the distractions come back, you're always gonna be in that position of, oh, what just happened? Okay? I hope that everyone understood today's story of the Samaritan woman by the well, that we're able to see deeply that in her life, that interaction she has with God is the same one that all of us are having right now. That search for something deeper, more meaningful, and you realize it even more now because you don't have anyone around you. And even if you have like your best friends with you or whatever, if you live with them every day for 24 hours, like 40 days in a row, you're not going to want to hang with them all the time. I'm just sorry. That's just the way it is. Why? In the end, like I said, you got to search in yourself right now. Okay? So I'm very grateful that all of you came here today. Make sure that on this Facebook page for the Lord's Love Church, make sure you like the page. And if you want to see more of these Lockdown Tuesday videos or any of the other of the Bubble Talks, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Espresso with Sky, and you'll have all the previous and past lectures and talks on there too. Okay? And if you want to join me on Instagram, you can join me at psky8.